Good afternoon, everyone. I trust that you can hear me. If you can't, someone let me know in the chat function. Thanks for joining us today, and thanks to George Bailey for coming along after Australia announced its T20 men's captain and the squad for the ICC T20 Men's World Cup coming up in a couple of weeks' time in the West Indies and the US. As always, if you have a question for George, please raise your hand, and we'll try to get through as many questions as we can in the next 10 or 15 minutes. So if everyone's ready to go, we'll get underway. So if someone wants to lead us off, that would be great. Anyone want to go first? Andrew.
G'day, George. I guess the question on everybody's lips is how close did Jake Fraser-McGurk get to getting into the squad?
Yeah, he was close. Yeah, along with a number of others. I think I think Matt Short, I think Spencer Johnson, I think Tanvir Sanger, I think all put up good cases. It's obviously been fantastic to see Jake play as well as he has in the last couple of weeks in the IPL. Firstly, getting that opportunity and taking it's been wonderful. But I mean, ultimately, in that squad of 15, we're just looking to get that balance. The balance that we want in terms of getting across there and playing each game, different opponent, different venues, different surfaces, and wanting to get all 15 players on the selection table for each and every game to be able to have those discussions to structure up how we want. His form's been great of late, and that's fantastic. But the way we're functioning at the top of the order with the three guys we've had there's been really strong as well.
Thank you.
Scott.
Just on Jake, I know his runs ball come at the top of the order, but was there ever a thought of using him as a finisher or picking him in a different kind of role to have him in the squad? Obviously, your top order's pretty set, it would seem.
Yeah, not at this stage. I think I'm not sure how much work he's actually done in other positions, but he certainly looks like that top of the order is where he's best suited. So we think we've got some other guys that have got some good flexibility around where they bat, and as part of the build, I think we've seen some players perform in some different batting roles to sort of cover off that for any eventuality. But I think if he was to get an opportunity to be at the top.
And can I just check fitness of Mitch Marsh? Named him as captain today, but is there any concern at all over his health going into next month?
No, coming on pretty well. I think he starts batting again pretty shortly. Obviously, the build to bowling is probably going to look a little bit different, but again, we've got some flexibility there, so that'll build in time. He'll certainly be fit and firing to play.
Dan.
G'day, George. Just as an extension of that, how transferable do you think the IPL scores and the way the game's been played over there will be compared to what we're expecting in the West Indies and the US? And I suppose, what do you think scores will be like in the US in the tournament?
Yeah, I don't know. It's been a fascinating IPL, hasn't it, on that front? I mean, I think there's a couple of. I think the wickets have been phenomenal. They tend to be slightly smaller grounds. There's no doubt. I think that the impact player has a bearing on the freedom of batting teams over there, and that ability for teams to almost structure up each innings with an extra batter. But I'd be speculating to sort of try and predict if that would be the same. I think generally in World Cups, just naturally, particularly as you get to the back end, things can tend to tighten up a little bit. But so much of that will just probably depend on the surfaces we also get in the West Indies.
All right.
Thanks, Cole. Hey, George. Just on Mitch Marsh, it's a great story. Him captaining Australia to a World Cup. I mean, what is it about him that you think makes him a leader?
A number of things, and I think he's just got the natural characteristics of someone who's he's very genuine, good care around others. Performance is obviously a really important one too. From your captain, your leader, you want them leading from the front. I think Mitch has done that particularly well in T20 cricket over a period of time. Every opportunity he's had in that leadership role. I think going back even as far as South Africa last year, creates a wonderful dynamic within the group. Gives great support to the players around him. Works well with the coaching staff around him as well.
Sorry, if I could just ask you one more. Going back to Daniel Cherney's question about the things that we're seeing in the IPL. So even the form of the likes of Mitch Starc or Glenn Maxwell, not saying that impacts selection, but do you read much into it at all, or do you just look at it as a tournament in different conditions and that really doesn't matter much?
I mean, you obviously keep an eye on it, but I think particularly with those two that you mentioned, their performances over a long period of time internationally have been really good. The one thing I think you've got to take into account is that franchises can use players slightly differently to how you might envisage using them in the international team. So some players play slightly different roles, but we've seen plenty of examples in the past where a player's had a good or a bad franchise tournament, and there's not necessarily a correlation with what's going to happen then internationally.
Mel.
Yeah, George, I was just wondering, there's obviously been quite a bit of hype around Fraser McGurk, but if you look at his background, he hasn't done a lot, and he was given the opportunity of playing a couple of one-day games for Australia. I just wondered, what would he need to do to be able to take the next step permanently?
He's going about it the right way, isn't he? He's, particularly in the last 3 weeks, it's, the performances he's putting up are certainly eye-catching. So there's no doubt that that's the best way to do it. And then clearly the consistency of that performance, those performances across formats. But we picked him in a couple of the one-dayers across the summer. There's a good skill set there. A young guy. He's really eager to learn, and the feedback from those that he's been around at Delhi is that he's really eager to learn and keep growing his game. He's certainly not someone who thinks he's got it all made and is the complete package. So I think that's really exciting going forward.
Thank you.
Luke.
Hey, George. First one, just is there any concern around Davey's hand at all, or is it still coming along all right? I know we've still got a little while to the tournament.
No concern from the point of view that I think it's been cleared that there's no break, but it's it's still causing him a fair bit of discomfort. So we'll obviously monitor that. Hopefully he can get back and play a couple more games in the IPL to finish off. But yeah, I think it's just one of those ones. It's just some deep-seated bone bruising, and it's going to take a little bit of time. But it's I don't think anyone's sort of been able to give him a really definitive answer on how long that'll be.
And just with Steve Smith, being a player who's been around for so long, is that a conversation you had to have, or how did that situation get handled, or did he just sort of not find out like other players, for example?
No, Steve. He's one that was on an extended list and was in the conversations. Again, he's probably one that I think his best T20 work of late has come at the top of the order. And at the moment, we see that top order being really settled.
Ben.
Yeah, George, just further on Steve, obviously it's a big decision to leave Steve out of any side. What do you feel that it means for his future? Like, do you hope that he turns his attention just fully to first class cricket, and how does he kind of, I guess, keep himself in check for the summer without perhaps as much cricket on?
It's not necessarily what we hope. I think that's probably for Steve to answer what his goals or challenges are going forward, and what he wants to achieve in the game. I still think he's got an enormous amount of good cricket left ahead of him across what formats. I think that's as much up for him to decide where he wants to go with his cricket going forward. I know he still loves playing T20 cricket. I think he's going to play some MLC cricket later this year. So that's something that still an itch that he'd like to scratch. But yeah, clearly, I mean, I think we've had a handful of players, probably more than some other countries, that have been multi-format for a long period of time, and it's natural that some of those will start to drop off.
And George, just on the wicket keepers, is Matthew Wade ahead as the first choice wicket keeper, or is that still something to be determined?
It's to be determined, but I think he has been. He's performed that role in that middle order. He functions particularly well with the guys around him. Pretty dynamic in his ability to finish or resurrect an innings, depending on what the needs are. He's been a really handy leader at different times when that team's needed it, and has performed really well. But we're really comfortable that with Josh there as a backup, and also with taking the wicket keeping aside, with the way that Josh has been batting as well. Again, flexibility in where that's been. He's had some great success at the top of the order. He's also had a few opportunities through the middle as well. So he just provides that flexibility of role, depending what we may be faced with.
Louis.
Hey, George, just wanted to ask about Agar, who obviously missed out on the ODI World Cup last year. The fact that you're taking 2 or 3 specialist spinners, if you include Maxwell in that, does that kind of suggest you're expecting them to pitches to turn over there?
It certainly did the last time we had a white ball series over in the West Indies. We had some surfaces that turned. And again, I think as the tournament goes on, if you do happen to start playing on some wickets that have been played on before or have had a fair bit of traffic on them, that's certainly a possibility. It gives us the ability to structure up a little bit differently and potentially play 2 frontline or Zamps and Ash in conjunction with Maxi as well. So you've got options there. So again, that flexibility, just being able to structure up exactly how you want, and the left arm skill set's a little different.
And just on seeing some of the other squads have come out and they've named travelling reserves and that kind of thing. Are you guys open to that? Have you thought about doing that as well?
Yeah, I think we will. I think like a lot of countries, there's still quite a bit of cricket to be played. So we'll just keep monitoring that over the next couple of weeks and see exactly. The one thing we sort of didn't want to do was have a reserve player over there who then ends up getting leapfrogged. So we're very open to taking one, but it'll probably be on an as needs basis, and we'll start to see some players. We've got a couple of camps coming up over the next couple of weeks, so the guys that haven't been playing in India, we'll get some eyes on them and see how they're presenting and how they're tracking physically, and obviously we'll keep monitoring those guys that are in India and still playing with a fair bit of cricket to come.
Is that, if I can just go one more, is that potentially one for Jake that you might look at, being a younger guy as well, and potential to learn even if he doesn't play?
Yeah, not necessarily learning. I think if he's there, it's there. He'll be there for a reason. As you are when you're trying to pick the squad of 15, you're after the balance, you're after that ability to have the people on the selection table when you need them. So he's in that mix. I think the players that I sort of mentioned at the start, I think Matt Short, Tanvir Sanger and Spencer Johnson are all guys that are firmly in the mix for that.
Narrowly.
G'day, George. Just as a follow-up to that, is the door still open for Jake to be in the 15 if he continues the IPL form that he's got at the moment?
We're comfortable with the balance as it sits, but there's a lot of cricket to be played. So if that changes, we're open to changing it. There'll need to be a reason, whether that's through injury. Form's clearly a metric. Fitness is a metric, so it's just about making sure that balance is maintained.
And just as a follow-up to that, you're looking at the squad, you've got 10 players who are either injured, not in form, or not playing at the moment. How concerning is that out of the 15 just overall?
The form one, not so much. I think, particularly with the guys that we've had, we've seen that they have performed particularly well over a period of time. Internationally, and particularly as this team's been building over the last few series, with some guys in different roles and different positions. So some of that's been really great individual success, and the team's performed really well as a whole as well. In an ideal world, you've got everyone absolutely flying, but there's still a reasonable amount of time until the actual tournament starts. So you're hoping a few of those injury concerns clear up before then. But again, just making sure that you've got the balance come the start of the tournament, that by the time that tournament does start, everyone's fit. But we do have good faith that once they're actually in Australian colours and around this group, around Mitch and around the coaching staff, that we can get everyone in a really good place.
Natalie. You there, Natalie? We'll go back to Luke while Natalie tries to sort her microphone out. Luke.
Thanks, Cole. Hey, George. Just with Mitch being the man officially now, how do you see him sort of fulfilling that role with Paddy there? Also, is Paddy someone he should lean on, or should he go it his own way, or how would you like to see him approach it? And have you had any discussions with him in that regard?
No, I haven't. I mean, I think they've spoken at length around their love for each other and how well they get along. So I imagine that that'll probably happen quite naturally. Just that leaning on of experience, but who Mitch actually utilises once he's out on the field. I'm not entirely sure. I know he's enjoyed having Wadey there behind the stumps as well. But even outside of those two, there's plenty of experience out on the field in the sort of heat of the moment decisions. But I do think the way that Mitch has led this team over the past few months, and the way he galvanises the group, gets everyone feeling good about the purpose of what we're there to achieve. I think that's all encompassing in terms of utilising everyone that'll be in the team. But no doubt, just given the time that Mitch and Paddy spend together, I imagine they'll be offering advice both ways.
Dan, you got another one?
Yes, please, possible. George, just given leaving the form situation to one side with Glenn Maxwell, just about his fatigue that I think he touched on earlier in the IPL, have there been any conversations about him coming home early to sort of freshen up for the World Cup? And I suppose likewise with David Warner, are there any talks about him coming back just to make sure that hand is right? And just as a second, is it fair to say that Nathan Ellis is still the backup fast bowler, or is he challenging the big three at all?
No, I think Maxi and David are both pretty experienced at, having reasonably full calendars of cricket. So I think Maxi's taken steps to sort of start working through that whilst he's in India. I imagine Bull, given the Davey, the time that he's had off over there, he'll be feeling reasonably fresh. I guess depending where they all finish up in terms of their teams in the IPL might determine whether they get a few days break or what their entry point into the West Indies looks like. But again, that's probably more for the coaching staff just to ensure that everyone individually gets, if they need a couple of days or they need to potentially use that week in the West Indies where there's a couple of practice games, use that a bit differently. I'm sure they'll use that. And Nath, I think Nath, every time he's played for Australia, he's really impressed. I think he's one who's challenging for a starting position in the 11. He's got a slightly different skill set to the other guys that are there, so I think it complements those four quicks all complement each other really well.
Thanks, George.
QDQ Brisbane.
Hey, George. Just on another couple of guys that missed out. How much consideration was given to someone like Xavier Bartlett and also Spencer Johnson? Are they guys that we've looked at? You mentioned sort of in those camps coming up, and as potential reserves as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, they're two guys that when they've had their opportunities for Australia, have performed really well, which is exciting to see, in great depth that we have. But yeah, they're both in the mix again. They're on that sort of extended list. I know both of them will be playing, I think, in the UK whilst the tournament's going on. So they'll be up and firing should we need them.
Last one here, guys. Courtney.
Hi, George. Just a query on those logistics. How, ideally, how long would you like to have the guys in the West Indies, and those two leading matches? What are we sort of looking at there?
I think that's more for coaches. It's pretty tailor made. Everyone's sort of in a different situation given the time of the year it is. So some guys will have a lot of cricket under their belt. Some will be coming off of a bit of an off season or some time off, and will probably be really keen to get those practice games in, some actual match practice in. I think they'll all be up to speed where they need to physically, but there's probably nothing that actually beats getting on the ground and getting used to the conditions you're about to face. But now the squad's been announced, I think the coaches get to work and just make sure that everyone's individual prep is what it needs to be.
Fantastic. Thanks, Courtney, and thanks to George Bailey for walking us through that today. And we'll catch up with everyone next time. Thank you.